Hello students. Students, in the previous sessions we had started studying about chapter number 11, that is enhancement of food production. Now we studied that to meet the increasing demand for food, there is a need for improvement of food production both quantity wise as well as quality wise. And this is done by two methods. It is done by plant breeding and animal breeding. Okay, then we started studying about plant breeding, and then we studied the methods of plant breeding, where we studied hybridization as first technique for plant breeding. In hybridization we have done all the steps that are involved in this process, and then we studied about the Indian hybrid crops. That means the hybrid crops that are grown in India. That includes wheat and rice varieties. Then there is sugarcane variety and millets. Then we studied about the second method of plant breeding, that is mutation breeding. And here we studied about different agents that are involved in this mutation breeding process. Okay. Then we also studied about the plants breeding for developing a disease resistant or insect pest resistant plants. Okay, so the breeding process that is done in plants to develop the resistance to insect pest. And there are some pest resistant varieties of certain plants, crop plants, that are grown in India. So we studied about them. We also started about the tissue culture technique, that is an artificial medium that is used for growing the plants. Okay, which the technique is also known as micropropagation. We studied about the father of tissue culture, that is Gottlieb Haberland, who actually introduced this technique of tissue culture in the year 1902. Okay. Then we also studied that tissue culture technique based on the nature of the explant and based on the types of in vitro growth. And then the maintenance of the aseptic condition, where we studied how do we maintain aseptic condition with the glasswares used in tissue culture, with the nutrient medium that is used to grow the plants, then the explant, that is the plant which is used to propagate, then the inoculation chamber, that means the area where you work, which is the laminar air flow. Okay, and then the other conditions that are maintained. So there is a proper aseptic condition that has to be maintained while doing the tissue culture technique. Now in this particular part we will be starting with this last part of plant breeding method, that is micropropagation, and then we will be moving to animal breeding methods. So micropropagation, which is also known as clonal propagation, it is again an artificial process of producing plant vegetatively through tissue culture or cell culture technique. Okay, so here the plants are produced in vitro by asexual means for the reproduction or by vegetative propagation. So this process is also known as clonal propagation. So this is the only process that is adopted by Indian biotechnologists, that is the plant biotechnologists, in different industries for commercial production of ornamental plants. Now when we say ornamental plants, that means the plants like orchids or chrysanthemum or eucalyptus, these are all the ornamental plants. Then there are certain fruit plants also where this technique is used. Fruit plants like banana, grapes and citrus are grown using this micropropagation methods. Now in this method there are about 4 to 5 stages. At stage 0 you select an explant, okay, the plant that you actually use for propagating the other plants. So you select an explant, and then in stage 1 culture initiation takes place, where there is an establishment of the culture. In the second stage there is shoot multiplication, that means the shoot starts growing and multiplying. Third stage is rooting of the shoots. In the third stage, after the shoots have developed, there is rooting that takes place for every shoot. And then in the last stage, that is stage 4, there is transfer of these plantlets into the greenhouse environment. So you can say that till stage 3, the plants are grown into a proper aseptic laboratory conditions Once the rooting of these shoot plants or the rooting of the plantlets are taking place, then these rooted plants are separated and then they are transferred to the greenhouse environment. Okay, so these are the stages that takes place or that are involved in micropropagation technique. Now, what is the advantage of this technique? The first one is rapid multiplication of plants. Using a single X plant, you can actually produce and reproduce multiple number of plants. So there is a rapid multiplication of plants, and plus the time, it is not very time consuming. It is very time efficient. In the laboratory condition, in certain aseptic laboratory condition, you can produce multiple plantlets. Then large number of plantlets are obtained. Again, when there is multiplication, of course there is large number of plantlets which is obtained, and this is independent of season because you are giving the optimum required conditions that are required for a particular plant in your laboratory condition or in the greenhouse. Okay, so it is independent of any season. So suppose if you say that there is this certain plant that grows and that flowers or that fruits only in summer season. Okay, now using this micropropagation technique or using the tissue culture technique, you can grow these plants into laboratory where you are providing these plants the conditions that is required for their growth. Okay, so such plants are independent of any season. Then there is genetically similar plants. Okay, clones are produced. So suppose if you want a plant to be having a particular desired characters, okay, you can obtain that desired character in a complete batch because all the plants that grow are genetically similar plants. That means they are clone of each other. Okay, so desirable characters and desirable sex of superior varieties are kept constant for many generations in this method. Then you can also preserve and you can also multiply the number of rare and endangered species. Now students, this is something of very much importance. The species of plants which are rare and which are already endangered, okay, you can preserve and multiply these plants using such laboratory techniques. Also, you can grow new varieties of plants in a short duration of time. Okay, so these are the advantages of micropropagation technique. Now next, let us come to the next topic of this chapter, that is single cell protein, and that is abbreviated as SCP. Now students, the world would need to produce about 1250 million tons of meat and dairy products per year to meet the global demand for animal derived protein at current consumption level. Now, however, growing demand for proteins will not meet the sustainable demand for protein and dairy products. And moreover, human population in underdeveloped countries, or if you can say even the developing countries, they are suffering from protein malnutrition, resulting into varieties of diseases that is related to nutritional. Okay, so there are various nutritional diseases that these developing countries and the underdeveloping countries are facing because there is protein malnutrition. Now to fight with this, efforts are undertaken by conventional method to increase the food yield by different methods of crop improvement. Okay, so there is different methods of crop improvement like using biofertilizer, using biopesticides, then there are chemical fertilizer used, and then there are high yielding varieties of crops that are produced, that we have studied in Green Revolution. The part that we studied, Green Revolution, we have studied about all these conventional methods over there. Now, with the conventional methods, the efforts are taken in other directions as well. And this efforts that are taken in other direction is by non-conventional way. And one such non-conventional way is single cell protein production. Okay. Now when we speak about single cell protein, this is to meet the demand of protein nutrients in the growing world. Okay. And single cell protein, it refers to crude or refined edible protein. This is extracted from pure microbial cultures or from dead and dried cell biomass. Now the microorganisms like algae, fungi, yeast and bacteria, which have a very high protein content in their biomass, these organisms are used. Now these microbes can be grown using inexpensive substrates, like you can say agricultural waste such as wood shavings, then there is sawdust, then the corn cobs, paraffin, sugarcane molasses and even human and animal waste. So using all these substrate, these microorganisms, they can be grown. And the microorganisms, they utilize the carbon and the nitrogen which is present in these material and then convert them into a high quality protein that can be used as a supplement in both human and as well as animal feed. Now beside proteins, single cell protein, it is also rich in vitamins. Then there is vitamin B complex, there is minerals and fats that the single cell protein is rich in. Then this can be readily used as fodder for achieving fattening of cattle. Okay, so you can mix the single cell protein in the regular fodder of your cattle and this gives you a very good result. Then it is used in breeding fish and even in poultry and cattle farming. So this particular single cell protein, it can be used as a human feed as well as animal feed. Now there are certain organisms, the microorganisms, which are used for the production of this single cell protein. When we speak about fungi, there is Aspergillus niger and there is Trichoderma viride. This is Aspergillus niger and the Trichoderma viride. If we speak about yeast, there is Saccharomyces cerevisiae and Candida utilis. Okay, so Candida utilis and Saccharomyces cerevisiae, that is yeast powder, it is used for producing single cell protein. When we speak about algae, there is Spirulina species and then there is Chlorella pyrenoidosa. Okay, now algae as a single cell protein, it is already come in picture and it is used in many countries. These are spirulina tablets which is consumed, it is introduced in many countries and it is being consumed by people. And when we speak about bacteria, there is Methylophilus methylotropis and there is Bacillus megastereum. So these are the bacterial species which are used to produce single cell protein. Okay. Now there are certain advantages of the single cell protein. The first advantage is that microorganisms, it has a high rate of multiplication that we know, and this means that a large quantity of biomass can be produced. Okay, so this is something like in a very short duration of time, it is not time consuming, and in very short duration of time you can produce a large quantity of biomass. Okay, so it is a profitable thing in both ways. It is short duration, it is not very time consuming, it is taking a very short duration of time, and plus it is giving you a high productivity. Then the microbes can be easily genetically modified, okay, to vary the amino acid composition. So here you can produce the proteins with varying amino acid content. Okay, how can you do this? By genetically modifying the microbes. And with this, we also know that the microbes, it has a high protein content. It has a protein content to 43% to about 85%. Okay, then a broad variety of raw material that we actually consider as waste, that we studied, like sawdust and wood shavings. Then there is agricultural waste, then there is corn cobs and sugarcane molasses and human and animal waste. All these things can be used as a substrate for growing these microorganisms. Okay, and when we use such substrates for growing these microorganisms for the production of single cell protein, it in turn or indirectly helps in decreasing the number of pollutants. Okay, so this is one advantage, and the last advantage is that it is a good source of vitamin. It is a good source of amino acid, of course, because it is single cell protein. Other than this, it also is a good source of minerals and crude fibers. Okay, so students, this was about the single cell protein. The last part of this is biofortification. Now this is something, a method in which the crops that are breed, they produce a high level of vitamins, minerals and fat. That means these crops are having a high nutritive value. Okay. Now this biofortification, it has come into picture to overcome the problem of malnutrition in the world. Now there are certain objectives that can be considered in the breeding program for biofortification. The first thing is protein content and the quality. Then there is oil content and its quality. Then there has to be the vitamin content has to be considered again. Micronutrient contents like minerals are to be considered, and it can be achieved by conventional selective breeding practices and also through recombinant DNA technology. Okay. Now there are two ways in which, or two methods for achieving this fortification process. The one way is traditional method, that is traditional fortification, where there is a normal crop that is taken and then it is in those crops the nutrients are added. Okay, this is called as food processing process. Okay, so a food processing is done and then what you get into the market is the cereals with added nutrients. Okay, so these are normal cereals in which additional nutrients have been added. So this acts as dietary supplement for humans, and it can be added as a dietary supplements in human feed and as well as animal feed. The other method, that is biofortification method, it can be done in two ways. The conventional way is selective breeding practices. That means such breeds of or plants have to be selected that are giving you a desirable character. Okay, and when you select such breed, when there is a selective breeding and when you do a crossing between them, then the breed plants are producing the plants that are having a high nutritive value. The other way is by rDNA technology, that is recombinant DNA technology, where genetic modification is done. That means you're taking the seeds of a particular breed that you want to grow, and then you are genetically modifying that particular seed of that particular plant and then growing it. Okay, so here you are inserting the genes to increase the plant nutrition production, and this again gives you the plant that is producing high level of nutrition. Okay, so there are two methods. Any of the method you use, both the methods are focusing on making the plant food more nutritive as plant grows and develops. Okay, now there are some examples of biofortification that is undertaken in our country. The first one is fortified maize. Now this fortified maize, biofortified maize, it is having twice the amount of amino acid lysine and tryptophan. Then there is one variety of wheat which is grown, which is known as Atlas 66. This variety of wheat is having high protein content. Then there is iron fortified rice which is grown in our country, which is having 5 times more iron than the normal rice. Then there are certain fortification process done in vegetables also. So the vegetable crops like carrot and spinach, which is having more vitamin A and mineral content, are grown through this method. And then bitter gourd, tomato are also grown with enriched vitamin C content. Okay, so these are some of the examples of biofortification. Now students, we end the part of plant breeding over here. The next part is animal husbandry. From here we will be starting about the animal breeding process. Now, animal husbandry, it is an agricultural practice for breeding and raising the livestock. Okay, and it is not only a skill of farmer but also is as much a science and art. It involves poultry farming, it involves bee farming, then there is fish farming done, beekeeping is done, then there is sericulture and lab culture that is done. And these animals, they are used by humans for obtaining products like milk, mainly milk and eggs you can say. Then there is meat, wool from the sheep, honey from the honeybee, silk from the silkworm, and all of these things. Now, during the conventional practices of animal breeding, just taking care of these animals for giving the maximum yield is not enough. Now, although India and China is having 70% of the world livestock production, but this 70% of the world's livestock production, it only gives the productivity of 25% of the world farm produce. Now, to achieve more, there has to be certain professional approach that has to be taken, and professional approach, if taken, it will boost the productivity of these materials that we are obtaining from these animals. Okay, when we say professional approach, there has to be proper maintenance and there has to be technology used. Okay, so there has to be certain industrial principles of production that has to be kept in mind and that has to be applied, and there has to be certain processing and marketing strategies which has to be employed to give more and more production. Now, when we speak about management of farm and farm animals, farm management, it starts from selection of high yielding breeds. Their food requirement has to be met. There has to be a supply of adequate nutrition to these animals. Then with this, there has to be cleanliness that has to be kept in mind. So there has to be a clean environment, and maintenance of their health is very important. With this, other things like veterinary supervision, at regular interval of time, it is very required. Vaccination to these animals is again very important. Then there has to be high yielding crossbreeds that has to be developed. Then production and preservation of these products have to be taken into consideration. Okay, there has to be new techniques for preservation of these products. Then at the last, distribution and marketing strategies have to be made. Okay, now with this, let us study about animal breeding. Now, when we speak about breed, a breed is considered to be a group of animals that are related by similar of their characters. When we say similar characters, it can be their general appearance, general features, their size, etc. So when a group of animals are showing all these similar general characters, they are said to be in one breed. Now, breeding of animals, it is an important aspect of animal husbandry, and animal breeding aims at increasing the yield of the animals and improving the desirable quality of the products that the animals are giving us. Now, there are certain advantages of animal breeding. First, improved breed with desirable quality of products. So there is an improved breed of animals, plus there is a quality of product that we are obtaining from these animals. Then the yield that they produce is also increased. That means if they are producing a desirable quality of a particular product, there is also the quantity of that product that is increased. Then desirable characters like increased production of milk, good quality of meat, maximum yield of eggs, which these three things are in most demand when we speak about animal husbandry. So these desirable characters are taken into consideration and the demand is met. Now, there are types of breeding. The two main types are inbreeding and outbreeding. When we speak about inbreeding, this involves breeding of closely related individuals for at least 4 to 6 generations. Now, when you breed a closely related individual for 4 to 6 generations, there is homozygosity which is maintained, and homozygosity increases actually. What is homozygosity? It is inheriting the same genetic material over and over, generation after generation. Now, when you inherit the same genetic material for over 5 to 6 generations, there is a pure line of animals that are obtained. And when there is a pure line of animals that are obtained, this eliminates any harmful recessive genes. Okay, so any harmful recessive gene is eliminated in this process, and accumulation of superior genes are maintained. Now, inbreeding is also having a certain demerit, which is known as inbreeding depression. That means more and more inbreeding, it reduces the fertility and the productivity of a particular animal. So this is one demerit of inbreeding. When we speak about outbreeding, it involves breeding of unrelated animals. Okay, the animals may be of the same breed, okay, but they are not from the same common ancestors for about 4 to 6 generations. That means if there are two animals of the same breed but their ancestors are different for about 4 to 6 generations, if you are doing a breeding process between these two animals, it is called as outbreeding. So these are the two main branches of breeding, that is animal breeding. Next is outcrossing. Now outcrossing, it involves breeding between the animals of different species. So if there are two different species from the same genera, if you are doing a breeding between these two animals, it is called as outcrossing, which is also said to be interspecific hybridization. So students, if you remember in the previous session, when we studied about hybridization, we studied about a type of hybridization which is known as interspecific hybridization. Here you are breeding the animals or the organisms that belong to different species. It helps to remove the inbreeding depression. So if you remember, we studied about the inbreeding depression, that is reduction in fertility and productivity. So if you, after this inbreeding process, for a certain generation of time, if you take into consideration the outcrossing method, this will remove the inbreeding depression. Then there is crossbreeding done, that is breeding of superior male of one breed with a superior female of some other breed, and the new animal breed that is obtained due to this crossing will have the desired character. Okay, so one such example in India is Hisardale, that is this sheep, this new breed of sheep that is developed in Punjab by crossing the Bikaneri breed with the Merino Ram breed. So these two different breeds are crossed together to have a desirable character, and there is a new breed of sheep that is developed which is known as Hisardale sheep. Okay, so this is crossbreeding. Then there is interspecific hybridization that we have spoken about. So this involves breeding of animals of two different but related species. The two species have to be related. Now one such classical example of interspecific breeding is the breeding of horse and a donkey. Okay, so this results in the formation of animal with desirable characters from both the parents. So when there is a interspecific hybridization process, and when there is a breeding done between a horse and a donkey, a mule is obtained. Now this mule will have both the characters of both the parents, okay, desirable characters of both the parents. It can lift the heavy load as donkey, and it can climb to a higher altitude, and it also has the character of the horse of having a good speed, of running fast. So these are the two main characters that are obtained in this particular breed. Then there is artificial insemination, which is a technique which involves controlled breeding experiment. So the semen from a selected superior male, it is selected. So either it is when it is selected and when it is secreted, it is preserved in a frozen state, or it is injected immediately into the female genital tract. Okay, so this is artificial insemination. So the semen is taken from the superior quality male. It is either preserved for a longer duration of time in a frozen state, or it is directly introduced or injected into the female genital tract immediately. Now this particular method of artificial insemination, it is useful to overcome two problems. First, the problems that is related with normal mating, okay, the problems that is faced during the process of normal mating, this is overcome. And then the second one is convenient for transportation. Okay, so suppose if that semen which is inseminated from a particular superior quality of male is secreted and it is preserved, it has to be transported. So it can be easily transported to some other place. Okay, so these are the two problems, the main two problems which have been overcome using this method. The last method is multiple ovulation embryo transfer, which is also known as MOET. This technology provides successful production of hybrid, and in this method, for example, a cow which is injected by follicle stimulating hormone for follicle maturation, and then super ovulation is brought about. What do you mean by super ovulation? This means that in each cycle 6 to 8 eggs mature simultaneously. Okay, then this cow is then either mated with elite bull or it is artificially inseminated. So suppose if this is the cow and the sperm is taken from this bull, it is artificially inseminated into this cow, and then there is zygote formation into the embryo in cow, and then removed from the uterus. So the blastocyst at the cell stage of 8 to 32 is removed and it is recovered either non-surgically, or it is then transferred to the surrogate mother. Okay, so suppose this is the surrogate mother, so these embryos are split and then it is transferred to the surrogate mother, and this is useful in cattle, sheep, rabbit, buffaloes, etc. So there is multiple ovulation that is taking place and then the embryo is transferred. Okay, so this is one method. So students, we end this session over here. We have started with the animal husbandry process. In the next session, we will be studying about different branches or different types of animal husbandry that is done in India.